Without inner work, there's no contemplation. There is just a story of drama and suffering. You can understand there might be growth in this, and you're actually making the space in yourself to hold all of those parts.
If I come in with this, like, how can I fix this? Then it's saying that there's a problem here. And that's another story.
Now you're sitting in a much deeper place than just the story of this is the worst thing that's happened. Nothing beats presence without a role and a story pasted over it. And you could just miss the true kindness that is kind of always there. If we can, for a moment, slow down enough to drop under the egoic story, you're able to sit in this dramaless state, aware, and make great decisions, and not make decisions out of fear, not make decisions out of panic. You want to make transformation in your kids' lives? Do your work. We suffer when how it is and how we think it should be are different. The more that I practice sitting in all of those parts at the same time, the more that I practice slowing down and not rushing it, the more I practice asking myself, what's happening here actually happening? The more my life changes, the more at ease I become. Trauma replicates itself. Until you address it, it will manifest itself into your life continuously. To me, the work now is wake yourself up, do your own work, let go of your trauma, move out of your roles, and do your inner work in whatever way that is for you. And out of that naturally will start to flow a different sense of what's important.
The first 3-time guest, I count my solo caster, you're right behind me. The third time you've been on the show.
Beautiful, man. Great to be back in Austin. A lot has happened since I was here a year ago. I mean, I don't think any of us could have really contemplated the year that was coming, when I was here in February of last year.
Almost the exact same day that we are recording. Wow.
Yeah, and things changed so fast. I left America in March. I made a run for home when suddenly things were starting to happen.
You had a longer stay planned and then you had to hike back, right? How long were you planning on staying here in the States?
I mean, I was going to be in the States till the end of April.
Okay.
And then my friends who were in your past world, the investing guys, they were watching what was going on in China. And so, before the cases really started to show up in America, they were like, this thing's coming and no one really knows how it's going to work. So if we were you, we would get home. So made a run for home. And then, I've just been monitoring just how fast things changed, how fast the political environment changed, how fast people bombed out of urban areas, how fast it went from, humans can control things to no one knows what's going on. It was, some of what happened in urban areas. It was quite something to witness, just how quickly the world realized that we're coming into a time where global things are going to affect everyone in really deep ways. And we probably don't have the structures to handle it yet, but it's been wild. It's been wild. And I was lucky to be in nature, and it seemed like the closer to nature you were, the easier time you had in some ways. It was a super challenging time for so many people.
Yeah. And we had talked about, I felt very fortunate to be here in Austin with, plenty of space for us and the family to enjoy, and that weather, that time of year is so amazing here.
Yeah. I mean, we felt very lucky being in the wild in South Africa and living close to the land, being connected to the earth, knowing that we had our water source, we had a food source, all of these little things that like a year before, didn't seem as important, but suddenly everyone was waking up to it. And yeah, just so much challenge for so many people. So
yeah, it's this whole idea of forced change in the quarantine for a lot of people. There was an opportunity for that. And I think a lot of people, certainly people that you and I know, have used it as kind of a passageway into changing things. And I know at Landalozi, it created this space for you to really move in a direction that you've been talking about, right?
Yeah. So we had a 2020 vision, which was we wanted to become a futuristic African village on, the community that lives on the property and serves guests when they come. And so we'd been looking at sustainability of our water, how we recycle water, how we use it, getting off the grid solar, making sure that we had food gardens in place. But it was a vision for a time. And suddenly it was like, okay, this vision needs to be realized now. Taps off, tourism gone, flow of money into the business gone. How do we keep our staff in food? How do we live here? How do we suddenly batten down the hatches and come together as a community and stay connected to our resources and do what we need to do to kind of survive this time? And it was really beautiful to see that investment in those practices really paid off, and we were able to essentially live off the land in so many ways. So that felt really good. But yeah, difficult, man.
Yeah. And it also inspired you, something you'd been wanting to do, you said for a long time. And it's like, there was no more fuck shit to get off the pot. Like if there was ever a time for you to do your own journey, which was the 40 days
Yeah.
on the reserve.
Yeah. Went finally, who has 6 weeks nowadays? But yeah, I went and lived in that tree for 40 days and 40 nights to explore the mystic in nature. Learned a lot, had a lot of encounters, and felt the depth of that retreat space. And had this really strange experience too of like people being locked down all over the world. And I too was in this enforced solitude, but in a tree, So yeah, it's been a deep time and a lot has happened. And I know for you and for me, like I think we all had encounters in that year that were really kind of life changing, from the macro to the micro to the collective to the personal. So yeah, deep, man.
Yeah. And people who've listened to the podcast before are familiar with your work. The Track Your Life podcast, which chronicles your, each day that you spend out there. And then you did a second, kind of shorter season with,
Yeah, the follow up to the 40 days and 40 nights season was just an exploration of the sacred. What makes a sacred space? What conjures the sacred in us? How do we create meaning that takes something from being just a place to being a sacred place? What are the dynamics of sacredness? And so that was kind of the second phase of that exploration. Going to places on the property and asking like, why is this place special to me? What energy is it holding? Does it hold an energy that affects me, or do I hold a story about the place that starts to make it sacred? Or is it both? Are we co-creating it together? Yeah, it was a diverse year for sure.
Yeah.
Diverse, yeah.
And then so when we connected soon after that with the second podcast we did, and that was obviously over Zoom. I was heading into my 5-day diet to here, which was, I really wanted to get together with you before I did that. And you gave me some great guidance along that. So thank you for that. But since then, we've had occasion to connect through the Unlearn experience. You've been on both of the sessions, both of the groups that I've had, and come on and shared your wisdom, your genius with the guys. And that was amazing. But really where you really showed up for me was when Jake broke his jaw. And, I was in a place, and I've got the email. I've actually printed out the email that I sent you as well, just to give people a little context about where I was at, what I was feeling. And I think maybe just reading that right now to kind of maybe give people some context for what I was feeling. And then really the medicine that you shared with me that.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
I love, yeah.
The first thing that I loved about it, and I think is noteworthy, is that you reached out, because I remember just in my own journey, it was a big moment when I got to the place where I finally realized that when I'm going through something, I can actually shed the self-reliance thing and I need to work this all out alone, and actually reach out to my brothers and reach out to people. And it just became this incredible practice, because it was not something I had access to until, I really started doing the work. When I feel stuck, when I feel unsure, when something's happened that I don't have experience with, I just used to perseverate on it and try and crack some code. And I didn't really know that I should just reach out and like have a place to start a dialogue with someone or just open it up. So, um, I just thought the reaching out is kind of part of what we're learning to do together. Like we don't have to do this alone. Like something's happened and I want to share it. I want to open up to it. So even that, like receiving that, I felt really lucky, that you were reaching out, and that opened the door for me to know that, when something comes up in my life, I can reach out to you.
Yeah, thank you. No, and I think that's important. Like it was one of the first times in my life where I'm like, I need help. And I acknowledged it and didn't, like you said, didn't try to figure it out myself. Um,
It's such a guy thing, right?
it's such a guy thing.
Yeah.
And what happened on the other side of that was some of the, the most beautiful medicine. And the reason I want to share it is because I think there's so much in there in your response for people to take away from their own experience and how we're brought up to, especially as men, fix things. And so many times things don't need to be fixed. They just need to, someone needs to be seen and that space needs to be held. And yeah, so and thanks for acknowledging that as well. Okay. This was sent. Oh, this was actually on my birthday. I sent this to you. So 2 days after Jake broke his jaw, he was heading into surgery 3 or 4 days later. I said, Boyd, on Friday, Jake was playing football with some friends and fractured his jaw. Whew. I knew this was going to be tough, but I didn't think it was going to be in the first sentence. But yeah, it just kind of takes me back to that moment. And fractured his jaw when he ran into a pole. Fractured in 2 places. Surgery on November 16th. Lots of screws, plates, etc. Jaw wired shut for 4 to 6 weeks. He's a senior in high school, just starting basketball season. Basketball is his love. He just finished his fall season, is playing so well. He's got a girlfriend. He's been in a great place emotionally. With this, no basketball until January. His mouth wired shut, and he has to deal with all that comes with it. It's a lot for him to process. It's a lot for me to process. I'm super sad when I think about it. I feel like his heart is broken right now. As his dad, it's really hard to witness his pain. I'm worried about him. This is a lot for him to manage. I want to create enough space for all the pain and sadness and anger and everything else to exist. How do I support him in working through this trauma with all its layers? I just get the sense that there's a lot hanging in the balance with this. And I'd love some of your insight into this. Much love, brother, Cal. Yeah. You were really the first person, I gotta say that the only person I thought to reach out to, because I just know the work you've done. I know the trauma you've been through yourself. And I think there's just so much in that wounded healer energy, something that really resonates with me. And, I don't care what the courses are you've taken or who you've studied from or the books. It's not about that. Those things are helpful. But when you have the experience and then you can layer those things on and have done that work, then it really becomes potent. And that's, again, the only person that I felt could hold a space for me in a way that I needed to be held.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. I also know, that the year before this happened, we had been, lining up time for me to come and be here in Austin with you and trying to work out how we could spend time together. And I remember the limiting factor was Jake's season, in terms of your availability, because you were so committed to supporting him on that journey. So it was like, these dates, are basketball dates, and that's what I'm doing. I'm supporting my boy in these places. So it was yeah, I'm just acknowledging how deeply you were involved in that process with him, so heartbreak.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, yeah, that is important to acknowledge, especially for where I had come from. I've been to a lot of his different sporting events and supported him in that way. But I finally stepped into this space with him. I just loved watching him. I didn't care if he scored 30 points or what. I just loved watching him with the men out there, his boys, and his interacting with the coach and him competing against these other guys. And I just had such an appreciation. And I had the, the awareness that there is a finality to that.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, it's like being in that space and then all of a sudden it could actually be over. Just like that was hard because there was so much joy that brought me. It wasn't from living through him vicariously. I've had my own experience, right? And I think, so thank you for that. So this is the response I got. Hey, brother. Firstly, I'm sorry to hear about Jake's accident. That really sucks. I would say separate your process from his. Give yourself the space you need to process your pain and sadness. Be aware of projecting your own story onto him. It's okay to hold both the human place, whereas his dad, you're just really mad and sad, in the higher vision place where this experience can be a doorway into more growth for both him and you. Don't rush to that higher vision place. Take the time to grieve the injury and its consequence to the season. Next, I would say ask him what he needs from you. Rather than assume anything, ask him. Give him the responsibility of learning to feel for and ask for what he needs in this process. I mean, God, there's just so much in this. Ask yourself where suffering and disappointment has grown you in your own life. Sit in it until you can really feel the place where you would never step in and try and take someone's suffering and rob them of the way it would grow them. When you start to put both the letting yourself feel and the insight into how suffering grows us at times together, your energy will become full of both compassion and higher knowing. This he will feel, no words. He will feel your softness and clarity. More practically, I would find lots of great stories about how high-level athletes handle injury and setbacks and let him sit in those stories. Injury is a defining part of growing as an athlete in person. Tell him the story of healing stronger. Help him tell the story of healing stronger. Ah, man, I bet you already have done all this. I can jump on a chat if you need. I'm here. Much love, Boyd.
Wow. It's a beautiful exchange, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would high five us.
Yeah.
Well done, Boyd and Cal.
Well, and some of the biggest parts for me were don't project how you feel onto him. It's so common as parents to, you're feeling all this and you just, it's almost like when a kid scrapes their knee and mom or dad's like, oh my God, are you okay? Versus, are you, like hey, look at that. Like they don't go into that story of, oh, I'm not supposed to be okay because I hurt myself. And that really landed for me. And then ask him what he needs. And then that gives him the responsibility to actually articulate that. So it's an exchange for both of us to really learn.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of things going on in there, right? But the thing that really stands out to me is the point of, like, movement one is to grieve your own feelings and do your own work, because what he's going to feel from you is the energy that you're holding. If you're holding the story and the heartbreak of this has been a disaster, this is the worst thing, and you go to him with that energy, then it starts to pull him into that field. There's that beautiful saying, when you suffer, I don't, it's not my turn. Like, there's enough suffering in life. So you get yourself really clean. You allow yourself to grieve as a father. You allow yourself to feel the loss and pain. And in actually letting yourself feel that, it starts to move. And then you start to access an energy that exactly that starts to pull him into the right story, you know, starts to pull him into the way of sitting with this and holding this. And and you're holding multiple places at the same time, which is almost the essence of what we would think of as the contemplative mind. You know, a place where a number of things can be true at the same time. And that is really the work of any practitioner of inner work. You know, you can see the upset father, you can feel his pain, you can understand that there may be a deeper reason in this. You can understand there might be growth in this, and you're actually making the space in yourself to hold all of those parts. That's the contemplative mind, as I said. And that is now you're sitting in a much deeper place than just the story of this is the worst thing that's happened, and pulling him into like holding that story with you then, because it becomes a weird energetic. Exactly as you said, the kid falls over, the parents all go, "This is the worst thing. Are you okay?" The kid falls over, and you go, "You good?" Now it's harder to tell the story of the worst thing just happened.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as the second movement, you start to see that when your energy is clean, there's gifts in this. There's beautiful things to emerge. Um, yeah, so I'm interested to hear from you how that started to how you started to feel that in your interactions.
Yeah, well, it really it was like an undoing of that masculine need to fix something.
Yeah,
And just what you're saying, like if I come in with this, like how can I fix this? Then it's saying that there's a problem here.
yeah,
And that's another story.
yeah,
And there's nothing to fix. There's nothing I can fix. And then when you go deeper into that, as you said, like, why would you want to rob him of this experience of growth? The thing's already happened. Like, what? How do we set a container where he can feel all that he needs to feel? I can feel all that I need to feel, and it's safe and it's accepted, and we're just in it. We're just in the experience, you know. And one of the things I really gathered from that was just being honest with him and not trying to I wouldn't necessarily do this anyway, but not saying, you know, it's going to be great when you go back on the basketball court again, and just, you know, you're going to do this. And it's like, I held that for myself. Like, I know in the future, he's going to be back on that basketball court. And it's going to be amazing. But to your point, I didn't rush to use that as any kind of like uh, distracting for what was actually happening. I held that for myself. And at one point, it was like right as he came out of surgery, we were at home and he was trying to drink water and he couldn't figure it out. And he's just in a state of helplessness and hopelessness that I've never experienced in my life. You know, here I am, I'm 49, and here my 17-year-old kid is experiencing something that even I can't speak to. And I just said, I don't know what to say. I can't imagine how hard this is for you, but whatever you need to do or feel or express, like just it's here. We're here. Um, you know, and just even little things like, you know, I would sleep with him or Peyton would sleep with him at night and I would go check on him. Rather just assume he wants me there, I would ask, "Hey, do you want me to hang, or would you like some?" And it would vary from time to time. Sometimes he'd want me there. Sometimes he's like, "You know, Dad, I just want to be by myself." It's like just asking, "What do you need?" And he could tell me.
yeah. I mean, to me, what this is, as you're starting to talk, you know, the deeper lesson in all of this to me is like the essence of what starts to happen when we are willing to do inner work. You know, without inner work, there's no contemplation. Without inner work, there is just a story of drama and suffering. You know, and that's like level one. You know, a terrible thing happened to Jake, and now and we just stay there. But with inner work, we're able to start to drop into deeper levels, and we're able to be with ourselves, clean house in ourselves. And, then what starts to happen is our energy starts to speak. The presence that we come to something. You're also not playing the role of fixer. You're not playing the role of needing to make it all right. You're not playing the role of cheerleader. You're coming to him with an open presence. You're listening. You're aware of your own suffering and where he's at. And you're just showing up and working with what's actually there in the moment without a screen of story over it. And most of us have a we have we have something pasted over what's actually happening. We have, and then that's what we see. That story becomes what we think is going on. But inner work gives you access to that kind of authenticity where the story gives way to just an alive, active awareness, an awareness that is able to say, and shit, I mean, what guys get to say this? I don't know. I don't know what's happening right now,
Mm.
but let me know what you need. It's just a much deeper place. And then what Jake feels, I suspect, is that authenticity of like, we're here, we're in this together now, as opposed to him sitting there saying, listening to you say, everything's going to be okay if you're not actually sure that it is.
Yes.
And then something in him senses like, why is this guy being like this? I know him well. He's my father. I know his energy. And he's trying to make this all okay, and it's not. So the authenticity actually builds trust. It's storyless, um, and nothing beats presence without a role and a story pasted over it.
Yeah.
Now you're just working with what's really happening there. And if you look closely into it, you see a guy who broke his jaw, who has like two incredibly loving parents who want to look out for him. So here's where, out of if you look through the story of it's his senior year, this is his time, this is the thing that gives him joy. Everything's fucked up now. Everything's ruined. The year's ruined. The season's ruined. If like you drop under that, you see a guy who got the best medical treatment. You see two incredibly loving parents who would ask him, "What do you need? Um, do you want us to sleep with you?" You would see him in a safe environment. You would see him working out via the stillness and awareness of his parents around him, how this could be a growth experience. And that's where we start to see that reality is kind.
Mm.
There's what's actually happening couldn't be kinder, better, more held. And you could miss it all in the story of Jake's broke his jaw, the year is ruined. You could look through that frame at everything. And it could be he can't drink water. He's not going to be able to talk to his girlfriend. And you could just miss the true kindness that is kind of always there if we can, for a moment, slow down enough to drop under the egoic story.
Yeah.
And the more inner work you do, the more you start to inhabit that place under the egoic story. And your life, I mean, we always joke in my family because, in my family, there were kind of we've had two lives. There was a life of intense drama. And then there was a second life where, there is very little drama because there's very little story of drama.
Mm.
We are largely aligned with whatever is happening. We don't fight what's happening. And that's not to say we don't have autonomy, we don't do things, but we don't fight it. And so, like I'll try and link this all back, but running a safari business, COVID hits, absolute wipeout, financial wipeout, travel wipeout, like lockdown wipeout, as hard a hit as industry as you could imagine, no end in sight. South Africa's bad at getting their vaccines rolled out. So there could be a story of like, this is the worst thing ever that couldn't be worse. And we could dwell in that. And as leaders in our community, we could start to terrify everyone around us with that story. We could start to scare ourselves, or we could love what is and realize that when we actually look closely, we had the resources from the land we needed. We have a community that we've invested deeply in building family and supportive structures who are willing to pull together. Um, we could work out that we could batten down the hatches, and make it through the year. And so there's, again, like we could enjoy a silent reserve with no planes flying over bringing tourists or no tourist trucks out. So I just think, I guess the essence of it is like, what happens when we inhabit the place under the story of drama? And the other thing that starts to happen there is, without the story of drama, your decision making is so on point
Mm.
compared to, what are we going to do now? Where are we going to take this? How does this go? There's enough stillness that you're able to sit in this dramaless state, aware, um, and make great decisions, and not make decisions out of fear, not make decisions out of panic. So it's a magical place, and to have your drama meter reset is a wonderful thing in life. You
Yeah.
know, and there's so many ways to experience almost anything that's happening, and and to be aware of what story we're telling as it's happening.
Yeah, and it's beautifully said. One of the things that came to mind too is just how so often people have thrown on top of the story. It's so 2020. Of course, this happened in 2020, right? And that, for us, that never came up with Jake with the jaw. And I think just because we were able to have that perspective, very early on. But there's something that you're talking about too, that there's just a true, like, what's true about what's happening right now. And as you said, that builds this trust within the relationship of Jake and I, Jake and, his mom. And I was telling you, uh, as you got here a few days ago, that he's already risen to that kind of higher place, that growth through this experience where he has a deep gratitude, I feel like, just for life right now. And I had shared with him the other day that there's just something about the way he carries himself that is so different than he ever has in his entire life. There's just an ease. He's just cool without being like the douchey cool. It's like he's just got an ease.
Well, I mean, he's 17 years old, and he just had an encounter with, um, the physicality of life, the corporeal nature of life. And he's coming through it. And he's coming through it because he's, been held in a space of, you're strong enough to do this. Guide yourself, know what you need, ask for it. And no one has held him as a victim. No one has held him as in a drama. No one has held him in weakness and try to put kid gloves around him. He's been handed himself, and we're all initiated by life. And I think that this is his initiation. Like, you're going to have to go through this, and you're going to go through it in a way that opens you, connects you more with yourself, and also gives you a sense of how strong you are. Or you're going to go through it, um, kicking and screaming as a victim. And you know what? Here's the great thing: you get to choose. You get to choose. And that's where the consciousness in the parenting becomes really amazing. I mean, when we coach parents, we always say, your kids are not, it doesn't matter what you say to them. What they are really feeling is the energy in the house. So you can give long diatribes on how we do it around here. You can have the best ideals and espouse them. It means shit if the house doesn't feel that way truly, authentically, because you live in a house with people. The energy field of that house, and that energy field is stronger than our ideals that we like to dish out. And if anyone wants to say this guy's talking shit about there being an energy field in the house, well, I invite you to have a fight with your partner and get into bed with the lights out. I mean, the voltage that you can feel being emitted there, like, you don't have to say a word. Like, you can feel what's going on in that house. And the kids are even more sensitive.
Yeah.
So what type of an atmosphere is in the house? And when they're interacting with you, what type of energy are they getting? And I found it to be a phenomenal thing, even living alone in the tree. One of the things that I discovered is it's hilarious how hard it is to hold a story in solitude. You know, like you get in, like one day I dropped the lid of a trunk on my fingers. Got into like this massive rage, and it just passes. It just passes because I don't get to show anyone my sulky way, you know, which I would normally like drop into, because like if I sulk enough, maybe someone will give me attention. Maybe someone will get how angry I am. Like we do a lot of stuff to just show, you know?
Yes.
And with no one around, you move through stuff so fast. It's just like boom, boom, boom. You know, my sadness at a certain point, I feel super alone. Okay, well, let's move now, you know? It's harder to hold on to, and it's not like it's not a lack of depth. So, you know, this experience for me is, it's in the same place. Like, you know, you want to make transformation in your kids' lives. Do your work. Find your way to the storyless, clear, present awareness that is free of trauma, that is free of roles, and that allows you to show up open, aware, and authentic. Because if you know, here's another classic, right? Okay, let's think of a classic way that trauma transmits. Okay, here's one. Let's say that you had injured yourself in your final year of college sport or high school sport. And now you start rolling up to him with the trauma of what that time meant to you, how you missed out on, you know, getting the girls who cheered at the sports game, how it was your final season, how you never got to shine in the way you could have in those years, or, you know, whatever it was.
Ooh, yeah.
So trauma starts to, you know, so now you show up with that unresolved in yourself. Now you can't help but tell the story, you know, Jake, this is it, man. You know, these things happen, and you start to hold the energy of you've lost something, because that's what he feels, because you feel like you lost something. Ooh. We start to show up with the role that I have to fix this, and he feels that something needs to be fixed. He can't just be with this, you know, and you're telling him, you can say anything to him, but he feels like the energy I'm getting from this guy is that it should be different to the way it is. And we suffer when how it is and how we think it should be are different.
Yes.
When we align ourselves with what is unfolding, and sometimes that can be really challenging, you know, to get our heads around. And it's not to say that what's unfolding is right, but are we going to change it by being at war with it? Or can we be at peace with it so that we can make autonomous decisions from within it, from a still, clean, calm, awake place? Yeah. You know, it's kind of like, so I crashed your car yesterday.
Dude, I was about to say that.
Yeah.
This was, yeah.
Yeah. So,
we're in the field.
South African comes over to stay with his friend. First ice storm Austin's had in 100 years. Overconfident safari guide is, yes, I'll take your Yukon because I got to go to my meeting, you know. Get in, drive out, and I'm aware. So I'm feeling the road. It feels snowy. It feels good though. The car's handling really well. And in fact, I'm kind of impressed. Like I can drive safely, 4-wheel drive in the snow, and I'm feeling good.
And you've gone through some turns and down some hills. Yeah. So you've had some terrain.
I've tested it out. I've felt it out. And you know, I've got a little anxiety about it, but it's feeling good. Go up a hill, coming down, round a corner, touch the brake, and it's an ice rink. And, you know, before I know it, I've gone through 90 degrees. I'm on the brakes, like touching them because someone told me that, you know, touch them in ice. Eventually at one stage I'm going 180. So I get on the gas to try and like kick traction myself. And before I know it, bang, you know, I smash into someone's driveway. Someone's mailbox goes flying. A tree catches me. I dent some dude's Mercedes. And, you know, I just get hit by this massive wave of, you are such an idiot. You've ruined it. You've messed up your friend's car. Like you've gone out in the snow. You've screwed it up on every level. You've made a bad decision. You've ignored the conditions, you know, just like a tsunami of what an idiot. you've ruined everything, and it goes to that level instantly, right?
Well, I just want to, the text I got from you, I was on a call, and when I got a text from Boyd when he was on his way over to the meeting, I'm like, this can't be good. I'm putting together the fact that why would he be texting me? And there's a lot of snow out there. Bro, I fucked up, slipped off the road. And I'm like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, shit, man. And I'm just like, what? Like,
oh my God. I was like,
the story you were telling yourself.
I'm a 37-year-old man. I was a 14-year-old kid. Like, I'm going to tell my dad I crashed the car,
Yes!
Which is my trauma. Like, I'd done that.
Yes.
And just this feeling of like, this perfectionistic feeling of like, I've made a huge error, coming from the safari business. I guide people. It's about making good decisions. That's sort of that's my role around safety things. I got to make good decisions, reading the terrain. And I have just got like, in my own area of expertise, I've just got it so wrong. And there's just so much judgment, and I just feel like a fool, and there's this whole story of like, I've messed up royally. So that's my frame. And, I'm feeling terrible about it. Now I pull the frame away of, you're the stupidest guy in the world, driving in a snowstorm in Austin. Austin's not prepared for it. I pull the frame away, and what do we actually find? We find that I slipped off the road in a place where no one else got injured. Okay. I hit a cement post box. The cement post box broke at its base and gave, and it both arrested the car on the edge of a deep kind of ravine, but it also moved the energy because of the way it broke. So it took the energy and gave. So stopped the car, but also moved, like very kind of unique. The guy whose Mercedes I bumped, it's a fender bender. And then as I slowed down and watched that situation again, here come people out of the houses. Are you okay? What do you need? All that matters is that you're okay. Are you all right? Would you like to use our phones? Would you like to come in and get warm? Can we do something for you? So the frame away, what is there? There's a friendly universe. There's a vehicle that's been caught and arrested. There's people who are caring. I call you up and I'm like, this is what's happened. And it's like, all we care about is that you're okay. And I was just so aware of the disparity between, the story that arose and the story I was telling and what actually had happened. No harm, no foul. Not my best moment. I can also learn from it. I can sit in that. I can reflect. I can say like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to, as a South African, no snow. Might want to like take a little time to like be a little circumspect there. But no harm, no foul. And it took me a while to work through it and just see like, other than my story, everything's okay. Everything's actually more than okay. So it was just another moment where, got to see that. And what I'm finding is, 10 years ago, I would have been having waves of shame in bed, about being such an idiot 3 days afterwards. It would have been like running through me. I would have been holding on to the story of, that whole idea that there's two types of pain, clean pain and dirty pain. Clean pain is when you bang your foot and it's like, it hurts. Dirty pain is when you spend the next 5 years telling yourself that you're a clumsy idiot. And just that would have lain there in dirty pain. I messed up my friend's car. I do everything wrong. So having, be in the work of doing inner work, it's still there. I'm not just getting out in an enlightened state saying everything is fine, but the period of suffering is shorter. And the car's still parked in a pretty precarious place.
And it ain't going anywhere.
It ain't going anywhere for a couple of days. So that's its own like fun thing to sit with. But, it was just another example of reality. The reality was kind. My story about it inflicted a bit of, pain on myself.
Yeah. And here we are, we have power at the house where half of Austin doesn't have power. We're in a bit of a forced quarantine because you put our Yukon in a fucking ditch. but it's for us, it's like so good. And yesterday we earnestly tried to get any tow truck company and they're like, where are you? We're like, Westlake. They're like, nope, because they can't risk it because they'll go in a ditch.
Yeah. And I mean, right now it feels like any kind of rescue operation could add to could cascade. Now we could have a tow truck stuck in the, it's like, it's got that type of vibe about it.
Yes. And we're Tuesday now, and looking at the weather, it looks like possibly Friday, but most likely Saturday we'll be able to make a move on it.
Yeah. And when you go to what could have happened and what did happen,
you kind of glossed over the ravine part a little bit. I mean, that you were fairly close to going ass over tea kettle.
Yeah. It wasn't like a fall to your death, but it would have rolled the car. I would have lived, but that would have been, when you got that photo, that might have got your attention.
Really hard to get a tow truck.
Like in wheel spinning. Yeah, man. But again, like just a learning lesson and a moment to, and I've had a few over the last little while. How much story are you telling? How much story do you tell in COVID? What's your story? Who would you be without your story? As Byron Katie says, who would we be without our story? So I'm getting, these opportunities start to arise to just see where you're at with your development along the way.
They are opportunities, and even for Peyton and I, it's, sure. I mean, first we obviously wanted to make sure you were okay. And we're not sitting here figuring, okay, how do we get the car back? How do we get the car back? We made some phone calls yesterday, right? Like we said, but there can be such a story around that. Like, we need to get the car back so we can use it to go to Whole Foods when they open up and da-da-da-da-da. But there's none of that. We're just like, we probably get it Saturday. Okay, so we're here. We have this amazing snow. We've been working out. We've been in the sauna in the freaking 35-degree pool. We're about to go play with some gel blasters this afternoon. Like, we're just hanging. We're enjoying Blue Ash Farm maple bourbon, having a volcano smoke with some tobacco, tea, and herbs. I mean,
if you're gonna crash your buddy's car and and get locked in isolation in a snowstorm in Austin, this is the place to do it.
I feel like it is. We got a hell of a record collection over there. And the only bit of tension for you probably is that Petunia, our pig, has got something going on with you.
That pig does not like me.
No.
I mean, these are the sort of like high level issues I have to deal with in a day. Your pig doesn't like me. But I mean, you're right though, because you guys, here's the other thing is like, there's opportunity to hold that as a massive drama too.
Yes.
From your side.
For sure.
And then the situation starts to go up again. Like, you borrowed our car, it can go south.
I could be like, oh, don't worry about it, boy. We'll get it out. And then I'm feverishly trying to get it out, right? Yeah. And it's like, oh my God. Like, that would... the words are, oh, but it's okay, boy. But the energy around it is just exactly what we were talking about before. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah. I can just feel it in the house that
yes.
So it's been, great to navigate that one. And
then it's just honestly and I know you're still not all the way through it, I would say. So you're really fucking close. But like for me, it's like, it feels so good to like not worry think about the Yukon and be like, I don't give a fuck. Like, wow, I could think about this so differently. And in the past I might have, but I don't care. Wow, that feels good.
Yeah. And I'm aware of like, if I can get, the more I get through that story, the more it just becomes clear to me that when the time is right, what feels integrous to me and lined up to me is that I want to get the situation resolved, and that feels like, but I don't want to do it in a way that is dangerous. I don't want to be in a panic, calling everyone, paying some tow truck driver $300 extra, on the side so that he can slip his truck into the ravine to try and like get this thing done, which is
fix it,
get it sorted out, So there's enough stillness to say like, when it's safe, when it's right, deal with that issue. That's my work to do,
Yeah.
So I just think there's a piece in there. I mean, I had one other thing, about my dad.
Yeah, I'd love to share. I'd love for you to share that experience.
Yeah, so it's another in the same theme we're in here. my grandfather died when my dad was 15. And that story was part of our family mythology, the sudden heart attack.
Yeah.
And so as a kid, you know, I knew that story. And I was always, I lived with this real fear that my dad was going to have a heart attack and suddenly be gone. And he's this really amazing guy. We have this deep friendship and deep connection. And we've done our work together and we've moved through some things. And so it's deep and it's been a deep fear for me my whole life. Uh, and I've run the scenarios through my head. I've thought about how I would handle it. It's been this big psychological space. Like, there's a bit of family history, hereditary stuff, and so it's lived inside of me in a very deep way. And towards the end of COVID year 2020, it happened. And what was amazing about it is just like all of these scenarios, all of this fear that I had run over it, all the worry that it's caused me over the years. When it actually happened, I went in the room and I was storyless, and there were just things that needed to happen. And I knew what to do, uh, and got him in the car, the full situation going on, um, got him to the hospital, got him through the process, and he survived it. He had a triple bypass. And when I spoke to him afterwards, he said to me, this is post bypass, post everything. He says to me, Boyd, I remember walking on the beach, and then I remember waking up in the hospital. And all of my years worrying about the heart attack, the suffering, the pain, he missed it. He actually missed it. The universe was so kind that in a way, he obviously had to rehab and things, but the fear, all the story about what it would mean, that's not what happened when it eventually happened. And that was deep for me that's the key of what I'm trying to say. The whole story I told and run that fear through my body and run that adrenaline through my body over the years and run that fear through me. I'm going to lose my dad. It could happen at any moment. It could happen suddenly. I need to get the most out of this. When it actually happened, all there was a kind of knowing of what to do. All there was, I don't want to say peace, but it was nothing like the story I'd been telling about it. And it was touch and go. But again, I just got to see like how in the moment without a story, we got him to the car. We had a car. There was a hospital nearby. There was a doctor there who had the right blood thinner. There was an ambulance that came. There was so many things that had to happen, and they happened. And I screamed at the nurse, and she screamed back at me.
Yeah.
And she was right when she told me to get out and go sit down. And the years of story gave way to actually just moment to moment. We had everything we needed. And that's my practice now, is to just slow down enough, and it requires slowing down, to ask myself, like, what's actually happening here? And mostly what you find is that, uh, you end up sitting somewhere, drinking some water, and even when it's not okay, you're okay. It takes work to really sit in that and see it, but everything's mostly okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's going to trigger some, saying that is, some people will be like, fuck you. Sometimes it's not okay. Like, so many people have suffered during COVID. There's so much suffering. People have lost their jobs. And, I think it's important to acknowledge that there has been that suffering, but in your own life, when you take it down to your life day to day and you sit closely and watch, there is an opportunity to see, like, how much does that story line up with what's happening right now, And I just think it's work worth doing. And sometimes you might say, well, this is as bad as I think it is. And that's okay too, but just why not slow down enough to ask, like, how bad is this? Let's take the story off of it. Let's take my perception off of it and actually just sit, what's actually happening right now? What's actually happening?
Yeah, well, what's interesting for me is one of the things that came to mind I know about how your dad and uncle came to Londolozi, but as you're telling the story, like that, his dad passing away was such an initiation for him, and like what that gave to him at that age, the growth, like how could, again, like I'm thinking, how can Jake as a 17-year-old hold all this? Well, that you just end up holding it if you're given the opportunity.
You rise to it, and it's fascinating, right? Because here's my grandfather having a heart attack and my father at age 15 being left, dad gone, greatest trauma of his life, like a huge loss. And they loved each other, so huge trauma. And it gives birth to this drive in him to not lose this property.
Mm.
So they start this ramshackle safari business. Now, in some ways, out of that, the worst thing that happened, kind of comes this journey, and a beautiful journey at that. I can tell you that there are probably over, at this stage, probably over 150 marriages that come directly out of staff who've come to Londolozi to work there and have met each other and fallen in love. There are probably, there are so many kids who've come out of those marriages. There are so many lives that have come out of people coming together at Londolozi. There are so many experiences. And so you could look at the loss of my father's father and say it was the worst thing that happened. Or you could look at it and say that moment produced so much beauty down the line that it's astounding. And so inside of suffering, we don't actually know what's being given ever. And usually something is being given. Suffering is so often a doorway into transformation, into growth, into awareness. And we shouldn't rush to fix it or rush to get Jake not to suffer, because we don't know what seeds of growth, of transformation, of beauty are sown inside that very suffering. And so if you just try to take it away or just rush to make something feel good, what do you want? We don't just give you something that's going to make you feel better. It's like, we don't know what that suffering is giving. We don't know what seeds of joy are sown in that suffering. We don't know what seeds of transformation are sown in there. But all of this stuff, if it's landing on you like bullshit, if it's landing on you like words, I get that. You can only start to like mess with these places when you slow down enough to start looking, really. Otherwise it is just words like, oh, don't suffer. Like, fuck you. I am suffering. It takes it. You got to sit in it. You got to develop that contemplative mind. Otherwise it's annoying words. And I remember, at times when I was suffering and people would say, just try and be more aligned with what is. Like, you don't know what's going on with me. But as you slow down and deepen, and as you can hold your suffering and the awareness of it inside of a mind that can make space for the fact that you're hurting, and that you wish it wasn't happening, and that it is happening, that's where transformation happens. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in like trying to work out how to grow in that space myself. And it seems like work worth doing, even if it's because I feel like the more that I practice sitting in all of those parts at the same time, the more that I practice slowing down and not rushing it, the more I practice asking myself, what's happening here actually happening? The more my life changes, and the more at ease I become.
Yeah, dude, so well said. And I feel like it was about a year ago that I really started to feel what you're talking about with accepting what is. It's a big thing that, is part of Ram Dass's teachings. And that's where it really landed for me a year ago. But it's like I think about the Yukon going into the ditch. It's like
God
I
damn.
shouldn't have, right? You start out with I shouldn't
Yeah.
have driven.
Yeah.
Okay. But you did. So now, and it's like when we start to play like I shouldn't have, and then it becomes the suffering, it just unwinds all that versus, okay, I did drive. It actually was going well. And I may have hit the only piece of ice that was on a downhill, and there was literally nothing I could do. Like it happened. It's what happened, not, as you said, what story we want to play kind of around that. And I think that is it's one of those things, right, boy? It's so simple, but it's so hard to really understand it. I mean, I've been reading about that concept for so long, and it didn't land for me about a year ago. I was like, and I still lose track of that, right? For sure. But like when I feel it, it's like, oh, this is just what's happened. That's the truth. That's reality. Now, what's the course of action? And again, we kind of got into like, is there a fixing, or is it just to hold space for what has happened and not blame?
To me, it's like developing the capacity to sit in all sides of it compassionately. Um, that that's where it starts. Oh, excuse me.
Get it,
Got a tickle.
get it, pal.
That's what inner work does. It gives you, when you address your trauma, there's that whole thing where trauma replicates itself. Um, until you address it, it will manifest itself into your life continuously in some way. It almost like recreates itself. It's where, people who've been rejected are so defensive going into things, that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because people feel that energy of you watching for where you're going to reject me, and no one wants to open to that. So then the rejection plays out.
Yes.
The fear of being abandoned. So you start to hold on so tight to people that they want space from you all the time. Um, we do this, we all have our versions of the way that trauma is in us. So until you can get awareness around it and start to notice what you're doing, it's what you bring. And so we gotta watch for that. If we're incredibly self-judgmental, and we have a voice inside of our head that is just like such a deeply developed critic because we were never good enough at a certain time in our life, and that was said to us, so that voice became internalized, then everywhere you go, it doesn't matter what's happening, that voice is running. So inner work is to identify those things and start to shift them. If we think that in the space of roles that we're valuable because my value here is because, then we're never actually in the moment. We're just trying to bring our value to it. Where sometimes, my value is that I can fix things.
Yeah.
Now everything's a nail to that hammer.
Yes.
Yeah. So all of this work is just building those awarenesses. And the more you build them, that's a weird thing, in any kind of trauma work, any kind of role work, starting to see it first is the first movement. Like starting, like the awareness that, 5 years ago, if that had happened to Jake, it just would have been cheerlead, fix, make it okay.
Yes.
That's what I do.
Yeah. Rinse, repeat.
Yeah. Cheerlead, fix, make it okay. What do you need? Let's get you sorted out.
Yeah.
There's no space to actually have a more whole encounter with yourself, and for that to translate. That's why I'm into this work, because it just keeps showing me it's work worth doing.
Yeah.
It's work worth doing in the family. It's work worth doing in the world. It's just worth doing. It changes you. Yeah. So I don't know how I got on that tangent.
Yeah. I love that you got on that tangent. In the trauma, the thing that came to me, the trauma replicating itself. It's like when you buy that new car, right? You bought a Tesla, and now you're seeing Teslas all over the place. It's like once you identify with it, you'll see it everywhere, and it's the same type of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's that whole thing of, the world is not as it is, it's as we believe it to be. And so that starts to, when I've been rejected, everywhere I go, that's what happens to me. I know, and where I've been abandoned, that's what I see. So when we start to shift those things in ourselves, the world starts to change. And that's the great joke of the mystics, that um, there are many worlds, and every world is perceived through a point of consciousness inside of a human being, the mind. And if you really start to change that, the world actually starts to change. Things around you start to change. And Carl Jung said the same. He, to me, as a psychologist, he was coming to the mystic through like such a rational and like an intellectual firepower. But he was saying the same thing. What is unresolved in you and unconscious in you will manifest in your world around you all the time. So again, you clean that out, the world starts to actually change around you. You start to let go of the belief of whatever you're carrying by bringing awareness to it, by watching it, by starting to notice it. The world actually starts to change around you.
That's a great transition into the world around us right now. But before we get into that, because I really want to get your take on that, we've had some great conversations about it. Can you share what you shared with me earlier today about the woman who had been in the hospital, had the story around it, and how Byron Katie just kind of pulled the plug on that entire story?
Well, it was a great example to what we were talking to with Jake too. So there's a woman called Byron Katie who's one of my primary teachers. She had an awakening experience in 1984 and has been totally aligned with what is ever since then. She had what they call in awakenings like a sudden awakening. It's been totally abiding, and she hasn't suffered since 1984. She hasn't, whatever is happening, she is at one with. And she's storyless, and she sees it all as kind. So she's working with a woman who's been admitted to hospital for some kind of pain issue. And the woman is, deep, deep in a story of this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And she goes to Katie, I've been in the hospital now for 2 weeks, and it's so difficult being in the hospital. And Katie just goes, do they bring you food every now and again when you ask for it? She goes, yes, they do. Do they give you medicine? Yes, they do. Do people come and visit you to check that you're okay? Yes, they do. And just by asking these questions, she started to dismantle the story of suffering and started to say, like, you have pain. You're in a place where you're being cared for. You're being brought food. You're lying in a bed. And how much less would you suffer if you started to notice those things rather than just the story of the hospital is the worst place in the world? And I get it. I mean, I'm not someone who likes hospitals, but if you slow down enough, something bad might be happening, but a lot of good things are happening. And the story of suffering is creating more suffering. And that's where it becomes interesting, is how much are we suffering just because we think this is not where I should be? This is not how it should be happening. Something different should be happening. I shouldn't be here, but you are there. Imagine the depth of suffering if you could not have got to the place of this is what's happened to Jake in this year. If you had stayed in this shouldn't have happened. This shouldn't have happened. It's dirty pain. And it could have been 6 weeks of you as his beloved dad who loves to watch him play, just inside of this funk of what had happened. Or, this is what's happened. And how do we sit with this? How do we grow with this? It's two choices. That's it. It's a divergence of the path in the woods. And one place goes to a dark part of the woods where there's a lot of suffering, and the other takes you to a place where it doesn't have to be okay, but you're not totally running the story of suffering. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love her work. So good. So it's not to throw a story on top of this, but I think objectively it's a bit of a shit show out there in the world right now. I think there is a lot of really cognitive dissonance about what the hell is going on, what's true, what's not true. There's smart people that have completely different opinions, and there's one study that says this, a study that refutes it. It's hard for people to make sense, and there are a lot of good people out there that are feeling helpless. Like I just want to do the right thing. And then they do what they think is the right thing. And then there's a whole army of people that are telling them that they're bad.
Man, how fast did that happen?
Dude.
Just like where any kind of consensus just disappeared. Um, any kind of sense of solidarity, any kind of sense of, in all directions.
Yeah.
And man, it just happened so fast.
That's it. There's this divisiveness
Yeah.
along so many different lines right now that is really, I feel like I'm a bit isolated from it, just being in this community here in Austin. It's a very, I don't want to say it hasn't been affected. There have been people here who have been deeply affected by what's happened, but I think that the community at large has been very supportive and understanding and tried to really work with this last year as an opportunity for change into how we want to move forward in our individual lives and our collective lives and like what's important to us. But like my question to you, I guess, is like, what gives you hope that with all the unrest and uncertainty of what's happening, that we are going to be okay. We're going to be better than ever. Or, I assume that's how you feel just based on our conversations, but.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, I think that there's a lot more to come in terms of, high levels of difficulty in the world. And what do we have control over? To me, we have control over our own state of consciousness as this starts to unfold. And so where my mind always goes, I'm a believer in the pockets of light. I believe that all over the world, there is a transformation in consciousness happening. And all of the divisiveness that we see, the institutional kind of meltdown, the structures of society starting to radically fail in certain areas. All of that movement and all of that sense of like, where's this going? Global warming, the destruction, it doesn't account for the thing that it doesn't account for is for a large collective awakening and a radical change in consciousness. And so, what I've become interested in is the idea that all over the world, there will start to be pockets of awakening. People who decentralize in certain ways, they turn to each other for community. They start to get close to a tangible way of living again. They start to have a sense of what's actually valuable to them. They start to have a sense of doing work that feels more connected. They start to be mindful and conscious about where their food comes, what they give their time to, what they give their attention to, who they have around them, what they care about collectively. And I think that as those groups start to form, they will look to each other and a state of consciousness that they create with each other, which will be critical to holding a certain level of light and frequency as this thing gets really dismantled. But it's going to require that we find the others, that everyone does their work, and that you be careful about not buying into any collective group stories. You keep it close to you. You keep it valuable. You see the humane value, the sense of what we call in South Africa, the Ubuntu in all things, that people are not people without other people. We have to unify in pockets of shared humanity and see the essence of people. So I'm a big one for, like it's time now to do the work of the village consciousness. And that work always begins with individuals, and it begins with your own work. And people who start to go inward and start looking for the integrity and the knowing that is inside of them, they start to become less materialistic. They're naturally drawn to nature. They become contemplative. There's a natural inclination towards service. There's a desire to uplift and heal. They become attuned to the healing force of life, life's natural inclination towards life and healing. And I'm lucky because everywhere I go, I drop into pockets all over the world where that is taking place. And it is that individual awakening that starts to become shared in groups of various sizes, one person, two person, 20 people, 40 people, with a shared sense of what's really valuable, the connection that is really valuable, the work we really want to do, the creativity around building our community and holding our community. That's what gives me a lot of hope. I don't have great hope for the political structures. I don't have, great hope for those things. I have hope for how they will be forced to change as more people find a way of living that is more aligned. And so that's always where I go with it. And yeah, I'm seeing it all over. And it's what Paul Hawken, I think we've spoken about this before, but calls, the greatest unnamed social movement in history is that awakening to, it matters to me where my water comes from. It matters to me where the food came from. It matters to me who I'm around. It matters to me what I give my time and attention to. That seems to be a place where there's an opportunity, for large scale transformation, collective awakenings. And I think Eckhart Tolle has said, never before. It used to be that, an awakening would occur 1 in 10,000. And now there is a blooming of consciousness on the planet. And yeah, I think we also are going to have to teach ourselves to maintain a state of calm, relaxed awareness. Because, look how quickly this thing goes south. A snowstorm we've never seen in 100 years hits Austin. Power goes out, which means supply lines shut down, which means, food, people can't get to food. Grocery stores start to shut down. And what is required, like at the most basic level, it has to warm up here in the next few days. Otherwise, everything falls apart, and if it doesn't, suddenly, the 45% of people in Austin who don't have power, as that goes on, and if it were to get colder, now things are really happening. And COVID showed us the same thing. Like this, it's all going to change. How do we stay out of the story and maintain a state of calm, relaxed awareness? Because you're going to have to manage that. I mean, I know it's a bit of an edgy prophecy, but as we get more and more, of the weather changing, of the world changing, maintaining calm amongst chaos is going to be an important type of activism. People are going to have to stay calm, stay relaxed, and out of that place, be able to make good decisions. So those are some of the places that I think about it. I think about a village consciousness. I think about decentralized communities starting to work out how to take care of each other, share with each other, grow with each other, be creative together, because it's going to require creativity.
Yeah.
Things are going to change. So you're going to have to be innovating in a very like close to each other, share economy type of way. And then when other things happen, like in California, what we've seen with the fires, these are examples that are only going to there's only going to be more of that.
Yeah.
So how do we, in the face of chaos, become calm, band together, make decisions together that are, and have a network of value through relationships?
Yeah. And what's interesting, you and I were talking about this last night, whereas if you look at the news, you think that it's complete chaos everywhere and that everyone's having a horrible time. But it's not generally the case. And my friend JP Sears was on the podcast recently, and he talked about this summer, he went on a comedy tour and traveled literally from one coast to the other, going from town to town. He's like, Cal, it was amazing. Like, it's not what I was experiencing. People were actually doing well. It's not, again, don't get me wrong. I understand there've been a lot of businesses shut down and there's a whole, cascade of things that have happened to people. But generally it's not maybe as much unrest as we think. And I think that plays into what you're talking about. There are people, there are communities, there are these pockets of light, as you like to say, that are opening up, that are holding the space, that are getting more people involved. And it's like I was talking with Del Bigtree the other day, and his whole thing was like, look, once someone wakes up, like we don't lose them back to the other side. Like you're just awake. And so it's a sticky side that, so as these communities, these kind of light warriors really gather, it starts to draw in others and they start to wake up, and it starts to, like, I think what you're talking about, we start to find a new way in this world because the old systems largely need to be abandoned. And I think we're seeing it. We talked about it the other day, just with the blockchain network and what's happening there, the blockchain protocol, I should say, and cryptocurrencies. It's just the start of what is possible, where we don't need to have that third party arbiter come in and tell us what we can and can't communicate.
The system expects revolution. It does not expect abandonment, and that's where I think in a very technological, economical way, crypto is that wild frontier of saying like everything's going to change. We don't like no one really knows how yet or fully manifest, but you're starting to get the feeling that something is happening. And I think that will occur more and more at community levels. Especially as you see more breakdown, it's people are going to have to come together in different ways. So to me, the work now is, wake yourself up, do your own work, let go of your trauma, move out of your roles, and do your inner work in whatever way that is for you. Develop a contemplative mind that can hold, and out of that naturally will start to flow a different sense of what's important, what's really important. And then you start to move towards that, and that starts to, and what's amazing to me, I think of it as a modern day activism. I'm always on about it. Someone who finds that really authentic place, that is living in that state of calm, relaxed awareness, that is, you can feel that is present outside of roles and trauma, just is present with themselves, is integrated, a state of wholeness. People around them just start looking at them and saying like, what's going on with that? You don't have to tell anybody to jump on the bandwagon. They just start looking at you and saying, what's going on over there? Like, whatever's happening over there, I want to be a part of it. And in that way, people who start to live like that become like tuning forks, just because people start to say like, I'm drawn there, like something's going on there. And I think, again, I mean, I don't know, I'm just a guy from the bush, but
Sure.
I know,
Yep.
I do. I think that like, there's a hunger for different ways of living. There's a hunger for community. There's a hunger for the village consciousness. And there's a hunger to build it together in a different way. And that to me is what is going to hold us when it gets really weird. And I think it is going to get that's going to get more outrageous in the next,
because more people need to wake up to it. And I think several have, right? There's been large groups of people that are, as you said, they've changed political affiliation because they're like, this is not what I signed up for. But it's like anything. It just has to continue to get worse and worse and worse. And it just feels shitty.
Yeah.
But we need to see the underbelly. We need to see how the sausage is made. We need to wake up to all these things that a lot of us, myself included, have been naive towards, have thought people had our best interest in mind. And largely those trusted institutions have not.
Yeah. And that's where it's going to be like, who do you turn to? You're going to have to turn to the social capital in the people around you that you care about, and the value that you've built through building community around you. And like finding ways to innovate together at that level just seems like it has to be an important step in this. So, I'm no great prophet of it, but all I know is in a capitalist society, the real value is in relation, and the capitalist society pulls you into comparison through material hierarchy. But what we're really looking for is a place where we can feel like we can belong with others, and where we can serve with others, and where we're in it together and working out how to do it together. Yeah. So that's probably all I know about that.
Perfect. Okay. So where can people get more Boyd? I mean, you've got your amazing book that I've got those copies in. I would love for you to sign those.
Yeah, absolutely. So boydvarty.com, And we are launching our first online retreat, which is the Track Your Life online retreat, an opportunity to uh, discover what track you want to be on, develop the consciousness and presence of a life tracker, and sit inside of an 8-week program that is going to ask you very real questions about what you're looking for, what you hope to find, and how you hope to create it, tune you into your body, um, bring some awareness to some of the past roles and traumas that you might be holding, and help you really vision where you want to go. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, boydvarty.com, all the books are on there. And just, in these times, we really are going to have to, live moment to moment and find our way.
Beautiful. And I look forward to doing it. And we were talking about it yesterday about the online retreat. You said it's really for anybody too. It doesn't matter. I mean, it seems like it's for the one that's just awakening, but on any level, there's so much, an opportunity for stillness.
Introduction to the work to guys who have been running conscious leadership groups for, 25 years. And the course just takes you to wherever you're at and allows you to explore, and so it works at multiple levels. I mean, I did it myself recently again, and it's just helping me discover again what I think about things, helping me find out where I'm going, what I'm discovering, helping me refine. So yeah, it's got to be a good sign when you're doing your own course.
Hell, fuck yeah. Awesome.
It was great to be with you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here, man. Love you, man.